Welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast, where today's brightest minds in the medical device industry go to get their most useful and actionable insider knowledge direct from some of the world's leading medical device experts and companies.
Hello and welcome to the Global Medical Device Podcast. This is your host and founder at Greenlight Guru, John Speer. Joining me is co-host Etienne Nichols. Etienne, how are you doing today?
Hey, John. Doing good. Good to be back.
Joining us is a repeat guest, Mark Rutkiewicz with Innovize and Consiliso. And Mark, welcome back. And I feel like every time I'm saying your name, I'm getting a little bit better at pronouncing it. So thanks for bearing with me.
Well, thanks, John. Thanks for having me again. Etienne, nice seeing you again.
So bill of materials, and maybe this is a good place to start. I think a lot of people don't, especially newbies to med device, don't necessarily understand what a bill of material is, what it is not. And I would say they don't understand the correlation or the relationship between a bill of material and the DMR and the design controls. So maybe that's a good place to kind of paint the picture for folks.
That's what I was going to start with too. So
good. Dive in.
The quality system requirements, both in ISO and FDA, they've added design controls, which is great because it's sort of the front end. So as you look at design controls, there are design inputs, design outputs, design verification, design validation. Design output, that is what is your design going to be? And so that's the design output. Now, everything that's developed out of design controls is part of what's called the design history file. So your design history file is everything associated with design. Now, part of the regulation talks about the device master record, all the information required to build the product. Well, the DMR is actually an output, is a design output. So the DMR is actually part of your design history file. You can debate this with auditors, but it doesn't matter. As long as you have them, you need to have them, and they need to be controlled. So your design output, device master record, is everything you needed to build the product. So what do you need to build the product? Well, all the parts in the product need to be listed and defined and controlled. Now, device master record also, though, includes the instructions to build the product, who are your suppliers for those components, and then what operational steps to manufacture that. So, I mean, the bill of materials you can also grow it to be a bill of documents and a bill of operations. I mean, all that is sort of what's required to build a product. So simply saying, let's just cover the BOM, because that's the easiest one to recognize. It's like, if you know I have a catheter, I have tubing, I have a handle. Okay, those are two parts. Those are parts that are on your bill of material. There's a packaging material, so there's a pouch that it goes into. There's a label that goes on it. There's an IFU, and that goes in a box. Okay, those are like 6 components that are beyond your bill of material. Now, what's interesting is what the designers come up with. They're using CAD tools to build this out. And so using CAD tools, the CAD tool itself, you have to create what's called a PRT, a .PRT file for each part. So that just sort of describes each physical part. And then so in the CAD, they can 3D, they can connect them all together. And then when they put multiple parts together on a CAD drawing, they get what's called a .ASM file, which is it's the assembly of all the parts. So now you have 2 parts. So if you look in the CAD software, the assembly has linked to it all the parts, which the software automatically prints it out. Can print it out onto a design drawing. That's your bill of materials. Great, I got a bill of materials. Well, that's good for the designer, but how do you manufacture it? The designers don't put in the manufacturing process steps in there. So you got manufacturing steps. So I've talked about this a lot, as Consiliso and consulting with companies. It's like, so that bill of material, I ask, how many bills of materials do you have in your company for this product? And as I start asking questions, it's typically 7, 8. So you have the design document, has the bill of materials on it. Well, it's in the CAD. Yeah. And then you create a design document. So there's 2 locations for your BOM. And then because it's part of your DMR, you create a DMR document. So your BOM is on your DMR document. In your manufacturing work instruction defines, I got to assemble this. I got to assemble this component, this component, this component. So the bill of materials is defined in your manufacturing work instruction. Well, I need a DHR record, device history record. evidence that I built it per the DMR. So you may create a separate form that's your traveler document that has a bill of material on it. So now you're at 5 documents, and then you got to buy the parts. So you load it in your ERP systems.
Yeah.
And then if you have a quality system tool, like you guys, you might have a BOM or a PLM system or something like that, PDM system, the BOM is there. So which one is right? Well, they'll always be the same.
I mean, that's a nightmare. That's a recipe for disaster.
I think you just gave me a headache. No.
I go to a medical device company that I haven't touched, and it's like, yeah, they all sell the same things. Like, yeah, why does an ECO take 30 days to process?
That's part of the reason.
The signature processes and that kind of stuff isn't done right begin the front end, but the back end is like, well, documentation takes a week to process it because they have to make sure all the other documents are all changed at the same time. It's like, okay, one source for the truth. Here's the BOM, and this is what it's going to be, and everything else has to match it.
Right.
And you don't need if you have an electronic BOM that has also a bill of documents and the bill of operations, then you're sort of got it all in one spot. So one of the things I've done for a lot of companies on your bill of materials, here's my materials. Then on the bill of materials is you put a list of this is the manufacturing work instruction document. Here is all the tooling that's unique for that product is on the bill of material too. And then, depending on what kind of product you're making too, your ERP system might have a traveler, might have a standardized one. Innovize actually, since we're a contract manufacturer, we're infinitely flexible there because every product is different. And so we actually list, here are all the different operational steps that it goes through. And each one is different because we make, 2,000 different products for 200 different customers. So it has to be that flexible. But when I was in a contract, when I was doing implantable heart occluders, we basically had three manufacturing travelers. So we just put an identifier saying this is routing A, routing B, and routing C on the BOM. So when the documentation group got the ECO to release, they would know how to load it into the ERP system correctly. And that was just showing our controls because our workflows were really simple in manufacturing because it was basically the same parts we were making.
So the situation you described, I'm familiar with that, multiple BOMs. And so the solution you're kind of suggesting is having that one source of truth and then the others point back to it or eliminate those. What are you?
Right. You need to define, the biggest thing in the company is you define which one is the master. Okay. Now that's sort of a bad word these days. Let's even say it's like, which one? Well, the master is this, but then everything else has to copy it. Right. So, the CAD drawing can do this. This is released here, but then the master is, and you really want to probably have it electronic. So then if the master is electronic, then you can extract it. And, if it's like an XML format, then it can be configured to look like a traveler. It can be configured to look like a design document. It can be configured, and it's the same data. So it's just applying different style sheet to the data. So it'll look the way you want it for the different users.
Exactly. It's almost like the prime. We'll use my wife is in real estate, and so they've changed. The new term is now the primary. So the primary is the source of truth. It's where the metadata is, and it's almost like if the contract manufacturer needs elements of the bill of material or the design file or the ECO, it's like pulling from that same data source, right?
Right. Yeah, one source.
Right, one source.
So then when you change it, you change the source, and everybody else has, if anybody has an issue, they know where to go. It's just like, well, my document says this. Well, your document's wrong. This is the one that's right.
And that's, I've seen that problem so many times where, especially like when you have a relationship either with, some sort of supplier, like it could be a contract manufacturer, it could be a part supplier, maybe you're getting an injection molded component. It's like who owns the PRT and who owns the CAD, who owns the design, and even with that, how do you know that the part you're getting is built to the right version of that particular component? I mean, it's just it can be a nightmare.
Right. Yeah. So in the past, a lot of companies use PLM systems to help manage it. But if you don't have a PLM system, a lot of companies use document management systems. Pharma is totally, document management. It's like, well, it's a process, but med device is devices. So BOMs make most sense. Now, one of the other things about a BOM, if you can add additional metadata to the BOM, so when you look at a bill of material of wherever format it's, whichever it's in paper or whatever, each component on it should have a unique identifier. So a part number is what everybody does. And actually, this is based all on configuration management training. There's Configuration Management Institute that does training on this. I took that training. I knew this. I was a drafter back in high school, so I understood the BOM concept back then. But with training on configuration management, I was like, oh, yes, okay, now it all makes sense. I always did it this way, but now I understand why, because they went through excruciating detail on how to do it. But the bill of material, the list, here's the part number, here's the description of the part, and here's the quantity and the unit of measure. That is really the key of a bill of material. Now, you add a fine number up front. So if you have a drawing, you put the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have a circular balloon with a number on it, and then it points to this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, so that you can tell which ones are which. Great. So the fine number, the part number creates unique identification. The fine number helps organize it. Now, typically, most software systems use the fine number and filter there. If there's no fine number, it'll sort it by the part number. Now, if you have electronics, circuit boards, on a circuit board, your components also are capacitors and resistors and integrated circuits. There's standardized methodology for naming those: R1, R2, R3, C1, C2, C. So then you add another column on your bill of material. That's your reference designators for electronic components. You really don't need that for mechanical components. Now, what most companies don't have, and I've always tell companies to add another column called your operational step. So what operational step in your manufacturing process is that component used? Now, if everything's done in one manufacturing step, it's all op 10. So something simple, you really don't need it. But if you have, it goes through multiple steps, here it goes through, machining, and here it goes through cleaning, and here it goes through packaging, op 10, op 20, op 30. Manufacturing wants the BOM to be organized the way they're going to use it, which is different than the way the design people. So if you have a table and, fine number is where the design engineers want it, the op step is how the manufacturing engineers want to see it. And then when you add in tooling and manufacturing work instructions, you could say, and the op step with that document or forms can be linked to it. So then they can sort the BOM by the op step, and that's how they want to use it. And the design engineer sorts it by here, and they don't look at anything below, like items 1 through 100. Fine numbers are what they use, and they don't care about anything below it. And then that information is then used to load the ERP system.
That's really interesting. I mean, I guess I really hadn't thought about it from that perspective before, because to your point, I mean, as a design engineer, when I think of bill of material, I'm almost thinking about it from the outside in. So I guess, I'm oversimplifying here, but from a manufacturing standpoint, they're going to look at it almost from the inside out, and they're going to look at what are all the different sub-assemblies and how do these different sub-assemblies need to be snapped together and that sort of thing. So I think that's a good tip for folks is, however you build your bill of material, make sure you have attributes or metadata defined such that it can accommodate, the points of view from a design perspective or points of view from a manufacturing perspective, because if you don't speak that language, it's going to create some confusion.
That's why there's multiple documents today. I mean, most companies have, because the manufacturing people want to see it this way, design people want to see it this way, and they're not talking to each other. And then you get into the concepts of, design people's like, here I designed this, like, okay, so here I was at when I was at, cardiac pacemakers, we were finding implantable pacemakers and stuff, what kind of hierarchy do you have in your bill of material? Like, where do you create a subassembly? Do I have one level? Here's the pacemaker, and here's all the components in the pacemaker. No, because this is the finished good paste, and then if I sterilize it, it's a level below that. So you create another level. Oh, then the packaging level before it's sterilized, I want to give it another part number, and then I got the can assembly, then I got the hybrid assembly, and then I have the computer chip assembly. So it's a 6 to 7 level deep bill of material. It's where your subassembly are, and the subassembly calls another subassembly. And so, that's actually, they designed it so it matches manufacturing more. Well, when I was at a company doing external defibrillators, they blew it out this way. It's like, you can't build it that way. So the designer built it, laid it out in this CAD drawing. It's like, no. So we ended up creating part numbers in between, but using the same design drawing, because they had it on one picture. It's like, no, we're going to do this as 2 manufacturing jobs. and do them differently, but using the same design drawing. So that's where that comes in and really helps understand things. So when you talk about bill of material, you really understand from the manufacturing. Now, if you're doing simple parts, it's all one. And then the other concept on a bill of material that I just want to tell everybody here is like, so you got, one assembly and you have parts and you have one drawing. If you have a raw material, a single part, this is really simple. I got one part, the part number and the document number. So a lot of people make them the same thing. It's like, well, yeah, you can, but you really should have a part number and a document number, two different things, because if you want to be consistent across your whole company, one part has one drawing.
Right.
Well, if you have a tabulated drawing, I have tubing and I'm buying this tubing from the supplier and I have, 5 and 6 and 7 and 7, 8 long lengths. I'm going to create dash numbers for each length because I want to create one drawing. I don't want to create 7 different drawings and just only difference is its length. Right. I'll tabulate it, draw it once and say the length is variable. So I have one drawing, multiple parts. Printed circuit boards are just the opposite. I got one part. You need more than one drawing to describe a circuit board.
Right.
What's the electrical schematic? What's the board layout? What's the whole drawings on it? What's the mechanical layout? I mean, you can have 4. What's the test requirement? I've had like 7, 8 documents that describe one part.
I mean, you have multiple, how many layers are in your board? It's like, it makes them even more complicated. So,
yeah. So you need to design a system that's flexible. It's like, well, but mine's really simple. Okay, then for your company, you might want to just do it that way. But if you design for flexibility, then you're never going to have to worry about, I got to change my quality system because I got this new product.
Right.
Because my quality system can't handle it.
Right. Well, I think a lot of, the thinking about how you're going to architect your system, and I know, having spoken to you many times in the past and reading your book on Consiliso, this is really the premise behind that is you've got to be thoughtful about how you're architecting a system. Don't just, drop things in place and cross your fingers and hope that it works forever. It takes a little bit of thought.
Right. Yeah. And so I've been in the industry 35 years and I've seen all kinds of, startups to multinationals, being on an acquisition, being the other end of acquisition, disposable parts to capital systems. And it's like what I put in Consiliso is the concepts, and a lot of it's tied to, concepts of configuration management, concepts of lean, concepts of system engineering are all what's in there. It's all just best practices. I sort of put it down like from all my experiences in med device. This is the best way of doing it. And the one other thing then with a bill of material, when do you change a part number? It's like, I'm not going to change the part number. It's the same thing. No, as things change, you need to determine rules of interchangeability. In previous podcasts, we talked about, the UDI and there's rules of interchangeability. There's rules of interchangeability in your assembly. And, the basic question here is, if you change the product, and it's like, do you want to could you put them in the same bin in inventory? You don't care when your shipping guy picks it out. Does he care which one he pulls out? If he doesn't care, then they're interchangeable. It's like, no. That can only go there and this can only go there. Well, then they have to have two different part numbers. They can't have the same part number anymore. They need you to change your part numbering so that he can't pull the wrong part to ship to a customer. So rules of interchangeability and your part numbering on your BOM is really important.
I mean, this is an area that a lot of companies get tripped up because, versioning or, it's like, we have, version and how do you plan the obsolescence and all these sorts of things. But I like the way you simplified that description. Like if the distinction does not matter, then it is same part number. If the distinction is a difference that is important, then they're separate, So I get that. That's a really simple way to think about it.
Yeah. And there's a lot of schemes. In my book, I actually talk about, there's 3 ways of doing part numbering too. I mean, there's what most med device and most people say is you do a semi-smart number. You have a base number and you use dash numbers so that these are associated with it. So that's really good. I've done it where you have pure sequential numbering. Everything just gets a new number. There's no dashes. Everything gets new. It works. It works really well. Trying to find things that are related is tougher. Then you get to the other end. Every digit in the part number means something.
And then you're going to run out of digits one day.
It will break down. Marketing can use that for the model number. Great. But don't use it for your part numbering. It's going to fail. No matter you can't design that so that just use a semi-smart numbering.
Yeah, smart numbers get dumb pretty fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the revise, or well, I think John mentioned the revising or the versioning of the part. Right. What about alternate parts within a BOM?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's different ways of doing alternate parts, depending on what kind of part it is. You could have, let's just say, when I was doing electrical components on a circuit board, even in the military back, way in the day before I got into med device, even we had a spec number, a part number for this component. It was a transistor, and it's like it has to do this, and that. So the spec is generic, and then you can have multiple suppliers, and here's their part. So I can buy this from multiple suppliers for that part. Same part number, not alternate primary, because I say I can buy the same part from multiple manufacturers. Alternate primary, their parts are different. The specs are slightly different between the two. So you get two different part numbers. You can put them on the bill of material. Like I mentioned before, you want to give them the same find number because they're located in the same spot on the design drawing and the same quantity. But then you add another column in your bill of material, alternate primary subcontract, actually. I actually put an attribute. I've done it with 3 attributes. So everything defaults as primary. You have 1. But if you put an alternate, then you control it in the quality system as your alternate primary. Now, the ERP system only wants 1 number. You cannot put ERP systems don't like alternate primaries at all. So you can say, this is what it is, and we've loaded it this way. Now, if the buyer says, I can't buy that part, okay, according to the quality system, I can use the alternate, and they can look in the system and say, oh, I can swap it. And then you change the ERP system for that job, whatever, and use the alternate part because it's allowed over here. So that's how you want to be able to do that. And then, sometimes subcontractors, I want them to make the part. I'm going to give them part of it and they're going to return part of it back. And so it's sort of subcontracted build. So that's typically dealing with alternate primaries on the bill of material. So you define it up front and it has to be approved through the ECO process. That
makes sense. That find column, I think, is kind of invaluable as well as, like you mentioned, the primary, secondary. That's great. Very cool. So we talked about contract manufacturing in a previous episode as well. So the BOM, I mean, it seems obvious, I guess, but really nothing's obvious. Who owns the BOM in these different scenarios?
That's a good question.
The device manufacturer owns the BOM. You own the DMR. You're telling the contract manufacturer to build it for the DMR. Now, the contract manufacturer can give you lots and lots of help, but you're responsible for it. I mean, we've had startups come here. It's like, I need a drawing. It's like, okay, we can make it for you as a service. You own it. What number do you want? I don't know. It's like they have to sign it. They're the only approver. Is the medicalized manufacturer is the approver of the document. This is your document that we're going to build to because you signed it. You don't have a quality system yet. You need to have one, but we'll, and then it's like, well, what number do I give it? Well, call it this. It's like, so the part number is, wound care dressing. It's like, okay, that's not a number, but you don't have any other way of assigning it. So you're doing it that way. That's fine. But they own the contract manufacturer, the device manufacturer owns the BOM because they own the DMR and they own a design history file.
Well, but let me ask a follow-up to that. Who owns the suppliers?
Oh, well, your quality system needs to define.
I like the reaction.
Your quality system needs to define who your suppliers are. Device master record should define on your bill of material who is the supplier for each of those parts. Like I talked about in alternate primary. So some systems, some PLM systems, you have the supplier of the part and you have the part number and you link in on an electronic ECO, you link in which part number, which manufacturer's part number from which manufacturer is approved for that part. And if it's 1-to-1, then it's only 1. But that is all part of your device master record. And it's sort of tied to the BOM, but it's really part of the whole thing. And some tools out there have that all linked in there. I'm not sure if your new one's going to have that or not, but that's what you want to do. Because that's really, if you have it all in one tool, then you can run a report and like I said, you can have multiple views of your BOM. You could run a BOM explode report. Okay, BOM will explode into a document.
BOM for my people here.
And it basically goes down through the multiple levels because you have all the levels. Here's all the components. Here's all the parts. Here's the quantity, and here's the supplier. That's actually your device master record.
Yeah.
So there's a listing of your device master record, and that can be actually in some tools. It's like it's set by effectivity date. So this is what did this DMR look like? You could say every second of every day as different parts change. You can tell you what the DMR is at that point in time.
Yeah. Again, Etienne, I think we're finding that whenever we have Mark on the Global Medical Device podcast, we could talk for a long time on each one of these topics. This might be a good point, again, to put kind of a pin in this topic. Let me hopefully say the right thing and kind of summarize. A bill of material, I've used this as an analogy or metaphor, whatever the right simile, whatever the right English construct is. But the way I think of a bill of material is it's a list of ingredients. And by itself, it's not super intelligent. It doesn't necessarily tell you what order to put those ingredients together per se. And this is where the contents of your DMR are more like the recipe that talk about when to use this ingredient and that ingredient and to combine them. Do you think that's it's probably overly simplistic, but do you think that's a good way to sort of think about that?
That's a really good way. That's a really good way. Yeah. And it's like, I'm making chocolate chip cookies. Oh, I'm going to swap butterscotch chips. Well, it's no longer chocolate chip cookies. It's not interchangeable. It's butterscotch.
Now they're Scotchies. All right. Well, on that note, now that I'm now thinking about food, let's call this one a wrap. Mark Rutkiewicz with Innovize and Consiliso. Mark, this has been a great time. I'm glad we've had an opportunity to continue conversations with you on a variety of topics, and hopefully we'll find other opportunities to chat again real soon. But thank you so much. Sure.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And Etienne, I know you're having a good time, so we're kind of getting in a rhythm here. So, but of course, thank you as well for co-hosting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And folks, again, I'm sure you've heard me if you've listened to the Global Medical Device podcast, which since we're number one, I'm guessing you've listened to an episode a time or two, and if this is your first time, welcome. But Greenlight Guru, we're here to help you. We have a medical device success platform, a software solution that helps you manage many details of your life as a medical device professional. And now we have, or soon we'll have, functionality on helping you better connect the dots between your design history file, your DMR, and your bill of materials. So pretty exciting. If you'd like to see those features and functionality and how they all tie together, well, just reach out to us. Go to www.greenlight.guru and click a button that says, you'd like to learn more, you'd like to have a call, you'd like to have a conversation. And we'd love to have that conversation with you. We'd love to understand what your needs and requirements are and see if we have solutions that can help you better manage your bill of material and connect that information to your design control and your design history file and be able to convey that information to your manufacturer. So check it out. As always, thank you for listening. And until next time, this is your host and founder at Greenlight Guru, John Speer, and you have been listening to the Global Medical Device Podcast.